On today's show, we're going to talk about the writings of Chuang Tzu, just like last week, and we're going to talk about how to know whether you're connected with the Tao and how to get connected with the Tao. We'll have some other fun stuff here as well. So, real quick, I know, George, you do not have any children, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I have an 8-year-old son, and the funny thing is when you go from where you are, George, happy, fit, mentally sound, well rested, when you go from that point to being a parent, what happens is you go from knowing absolutely nothing about children's television to having it occupy 75% of your consciousness, right? Not that my kid is a television addict or anything, but it is in the background. And one of the most popular shows is a show called Bluey about an Australian dog family, and it's on Disney. Sadly, the disappointing thing is that these are not dingoes. I feel like if it was dingo Australian dogs, it would be much more entertaining. But a lot of adults watch this show and have big emotional reactions to it because it just says beautiful things about family life, and there's a lot of really touching lessons to be learned about it. So it's like SpongeBob SquarePants, something obviously you know nothing about either, George, that a lot of parents love to watch.
I mean, SpongeBob is classic. We've got SpongeBob. Bluey is new to me. I haven't entered that. That hasn't entered into my consciousness, and I'm excited to see what nuggets of wisdom we can draw from it. Because I mean, like Avatar, the animation series, it's made for children, and yet super deep, and also so much of the Taoist concepts, and very fun. So often these this sort of entertainment that's built for children can actually be full of nuggets for us older people too.
That's right. But when I was young, it was like Scooby-Doo, and that was it. And there was absolutely no nutritional value to that. But on a recent episode of Bluey, it was a big episode about potentially Bluey's family was going to move. And he was kind of really upset about it. And he has a teacher who's a very kind of Zen character named Calypso, and she told a story, a Taoist story about the farmer on the episode. So it's a little bit of Tao slipping into the mainstream here. So George has a clip of it.
Let's go.
Oh,
so good. Love it. Amazing to see and hear. Yeah, that's classic Taoist story, probably the most famous Taoist story, getting communicated in such a beautiful way. And yeah, there's a lot to that story. I think it is one of the deepest insights that we can get from Taoism. Yeah, nice.
And it's really, I think, freeing to anybody out there listening that maybe if your life hasn't gone the way you'd like it to go, just remember, we'll see. What, something unfortunate happens to you, we'll see. We don't know. And it's also a reminder to me that when unfortunate things happen in my life, like if everything good always happens to you, or fortunate happens to you, or something you find pleasing happens to you, I know good and bad and stuff is a little in the Tao world, but everything fortunate and good happens to you all the time, that becomes the new baseline. And now you're just at zero. That's just average. And then something very minor happens to you that's displeasing, and it's like the whole world is over, right? Like, if Kim Kardashian stubs her toe, it's completely the worst thing on earth, right? Because, she's rich, maybe I don't know. Maybe she's not happy.
She does foot modeling, and just, her £1 million contract for flip-flops is ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is I think it's actually one of the deepest lessons that we can have in life. It's like peace for me is quite simple. Peace equals non-resistance. Peace equals non-resistance. And there's a funny thing about being a human being, which is that we resist a lot. It's like we get anxious. Talking from my own perspective, I got anxious. I didn't want to be anxious. I judged myself for being anxious. Single. Oh, I shouldn't be single. I should be in relationship. What's wrong with me for experiencing loneliness and these feelings that I don't want? And the Taoists, as we explored last week, if listeners joined, they don't like to compartmentalize and label everything into good and bad and right and wrong. But maybe we can just take it from what's the experience that we have So you can generally bucket things into enjoyable sensations and then less enjoyable sensations. So, joy and happiness are things that we generally want more of, and then grief and anxiety and anger and shame are things that we don't want as much. And we resist those things that we don't want, and we cling on to the things that we do want. And often the resistance comes from a lack of perspective.
Yeah.
This
Yes.
wise old man had that perspective that, things are constantly changing. And this pain that's here today won't always be here. Everything's always moving. Tao equals movement. The universe equals movement. And so we forget that because we're focused on the present moment, and it's like, this isn't feeling very good. And for me with my anxiety, I lost hope that things can change. But they do, and they do change. And we don't have to kind of go to all the way to everything happens, life is happening for us, and see the teachings from everything. Like sometimes, a family member dies of cancer, and maybe there is a lesson in that of being able to just embrace reality as it is and to not resist. But also shit happens, excuse my French, and there's also, so non-resistance is a really key theme in the path to freedom and the path to peace. And this lesson from this story is really, really powerful. Can we take that breath, that perspective, take the wider look and view, and then we see that, okay, this is an oscillation. This will change, and can I hold on to my center through all that change?
That's a big point. Hold to the center with it and give a little we'll see. And the idea of, when something kind of that feels unfortunate in your life happens, it just means that when something fortunate does happen, it's going to feel a lot better, right? Into every life a little rain must fall. I had a narrow miss on a very fantastic professional opportunity recently. And it felt like a real kick in the crotch, but I was like, well, I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to embrace this whole feeling. I'm going to let this whole feeling go through me. And I'm going to let that propel me to trying the next thing or feeling joy if the next thing kind of hits, So, I think it was this we'll see, this kind of Taoist teaching. That was one practical way. I think it was very helpful to me.
Beautiful.
The funny thing I think, though, is if unfortunate things happen, I don't allow them to get me too down because I know that it will make the good stuff feel better. I still have to feel the unfortunate stuff, too, because then you don't want to get to a point where nothing affects you anymore, right? Because you can put yourself in that position. So it's, again, holding the center, but experiencing it, going through it, but not being kicked off your horse,
Exactly. Yeah, from a modern psychology perspective, the window of tolerance. So we have many different experiences, and we can stay with some experiences, and some experiences can overwhelm us. So, there was anger in my family growing up, and my nervous system can be very sensitive to anger and people shouting. So people can just be walking in the street, and I'm just imagining they're arguing even though they're not. And so that means that I'm outside of, I can be and have been, but I've been working on it outside of my window of tolerance. So if we're talking about peace as non-resistance, and the beautiful example that you just gave of an experience that normally you would resist, but you got to that wisdom of, okay, well, let's see what happens, and let's just stay holding on to my center and allow things to unfold. That you, through your practice and celebrating your practice, is that you brought that experience and assessed it from a place of perspective and wisdom. It was within your window of tolerance. Mm-hmm. And what we get from the Taoist practice and from meditation and from going into challenge, which is again why it's not only just I'm going to suffer the unfortunate times of my life. It's actually sometimes we do need to go into the darkness in order to expand our potential. So then that window of tolerance expands. We can stay with more experiences. And then that means that more and more of the experiences that happen to us in life we are able to come to our center, to be able to come to our wisdom, to then discern how to respond.
Yeah.
And that is something that comes with practice, and then also the remembering. It's like we can. It all sounds very good in theory. Yeah, this too will pass, and let's see. But again, our biology, we resist as part of our programming. So we need to keep coming back, and that's when the daily practice, or reading the Tao Te Ching, or reading the Zhuangzi on a daily basis, can help keep that intuition alive.
Or listen to this podcast. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we've been talking about how on this new phase of what's this Tao all about, George and I are going to be talking a lot about the work of Chuang Tzu. And, we've talked about on the previous episode how kind of the true north of Chuang Tzu and his philosophy was freedom in a world full of chaos, absurdity, challenges, family, children, dogs, two tortoises. I was saying this. You were talking about loneliness, and I was like, I'd kill for a little loneliness these days. You got an 8-year-old wife, 2 African tortoises, 2 yappy dogs, a mortgage, whatever. I'm like, I want one day of absolute loneliness, but a hermit. I might not come back. I always tell my wife, I go, I'm going to be a 70s dad this week and go out for a pack of cigarettes and not come back. I joke, and I don't smoke anymore. But so as we were talking about Chuang Tzu, and Chuang Tzu, his bit is, we were talking about the last one. People come in with all this baggage. People come in with all these voices in their head. They come in with all these identities. This is my religion. This is my politics. This is my morality. This is my social status. This is the face I want to show the world. This is my struggle. This is my trauma. All these things that people have, this kind of baggage that they have with them, and not to make light of those things, but we're all bringing them into every interaction we have with the world and others. Chuang Tzu, talked about people. It's like, look, there's all these people attached to you. How do we get away from this? How do we find freedom from all the craziness? And so there's another chapter in the Thomas Merton translation that I think is really valuable, and it's called Man is Born in Tao. And obviously that goes, we're using man because this was written many years ago, but obviously people are born in Tao, right? Everything in this universe is kind of born in Tao, but let's talk about it from a human perspective. And it goes a little something like this. Fishes are born in water. Man is born in Tao. If fishes born in water seek the deep shadow of pond and pool, all their needs are satisfied. If man, born in Tao, sinks into the deep shadow of non-action, to forget aggression and concern, he lacks nothing. His life is secure. Moral: all the fish needs is to get lost in water. All man needs is to get lost in Tao. And my first reaction to this is that the deeper one goes into understanding Tao, the more fulfilled they will be. And I'm not saying fulfilled in that you're in a state of constant happiness, or that's a bit shallow. That's kind of the shallow end of it. On the deeper end is the fulfillment, like we were speaking about earlier, where something unfortunate happens. We feel it. We go through it. We understand. We have perspective on it. We understand that this is part of the great cycle of life and the waves, the sine and cosine. And the more, when we go up towards the surface of being away from being completely subsumed by Tao, it is according to this, it's to be partially filled with human problems, concerns, aggression, as you were talking about, like there being barriers internally. But when one becomes fully subsumed in Tao, it's kind of like going into a womb, like the valley spirit, the yang energy that Lao Tzu talks about. And there's security and wholeness. and feeling, as Dr. Totten would say, of abundance. And so to get lost completely in Tao is to be free from human concerns, which is very liberating. Obviously, there is no perfection, and there's no way to be completely away from things. But the more we are in this headspace and on this path, the more fulfilled, centered we'll be. George, am I wrong here? What do you think? Am I getting close?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And yeah, I'd like to just maybe start at Tao, and I know that you would have explored this many times, but just to kind of, what do we mean by that? And yeah, so fish swim in water. And you ask a fish, how's the water today? And they don't know what you're talking about, because it's their everything. They're always surrounded by it. And the Tao is this word that the Taoists use to point to, the universe, everything within it, the ways of nature, and also then the principles that shape the universe. It's like the ways of nature. And this word could be God for a Christian, it could be Allah for a Muslim, it could be Brahman for a Hindu, it could be the forces of nature for an atheist. And for me, I grew up as an atheist and had quite a strong woo-woo alarm. Woo, 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 woo.
Yeah.
And I would, not want to anything sort of spiritual. I'd have my guards up and just, not quite sure about it, quite rational. And for me, what the Tao gave me was a sense of connection, a sense of understanding what I was a part of, and a sense of being resourced in that connection as something that could support me. Because, it's a scientific reality that every single human being, no matter what religion or not religion, every single species comes from the great same mysterious source. We share 50% of our DNA with popcorn.
Yeah. Do we? Is that true?
It's like the mitochondria that powers plants is found in every single cell that we have. It's the same basic building blocks, like plants get energy from the sun. We get our energy from plants, but the mitochondria is in every one of our cells. And so there's so much that we share with life because we all come from the same mysterious source. So Tao is...
So wait, real quick.
Yeah.
If I eat popcorn, is that like half cannibalism? Am I half cannibal if I'm sitting in a movie? I feel differently about that now.
Yeah, and if you're watching Hannibal lecture, it gets quite meta as well. Yeah.
Continue, George. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, again, it's speaking to that connection, right? So I am vegan plus cheesecake if I'm feeling emotionally vulnerable. And, plants are living beings as well. And, we kill plants in order to survive. And, they don't feel pain because they don't have nervous systems, at least to our best knowledge. But, speaking to that connection. So if we come back to the chapters, it's like fish, they're born in water, they don't know. We're born in the Tao, most of us don't know. And it's that kind of moment of waking up to, I'm not just George, you're not just Todd. These are stories that we put upon this great, mysterious manifestation, this mind and body and heart, 37 trillion cells coming together in this great self-organizing, spontaneous dance. Wow. So then if we come back to, so how does your life change when you are connected with the Tao? And this is what then the rest of this chapter goes on to say, is that they, sink into non-action, not contriving. And as Dr. Totten would say, the abundance that then comes from that. Like if you are already feeling that I am Tao, and I'm an aspect of this great mysterious unfolding, then suddenly I feel a sense of abundance, because I no longer identify as small, weak George having to work really, really hard in order to get money to protect myself. There's a place for work and there's a place for money. But if it's coming from a place of lack, I believe, and the Taoists believe, and most spiritual traditions believe, that's because we're not understanding ourselves correctly. So that we are aspects of the whole, we're already whole, We're already magic. We're already mysterious.
Already
And-
made of star stuff, right?
Yeah, we're star stuff that woke up. How can we not be enough when we're made up of star stuff?
Yeah.
It's the cosmic joke that we are the mysterious. Yeah, we're divine, if that's a word that works for you, works for me. Sacred. We have value that comes from our being, not what we do. And the more we can keep coming back, losing ourselves, losing George, losing the story of who you are, coming back to the Tao nature, then we get out our own way, and then that feeling of abundance and wholeness can lift us and nourish us.
Now, I'd like to graft our previous, what we were supposed to talk about on the last show but didn't get to, about alignment with Tao. And I think that aligns perfectly with the way this conversation is going, and the idea of fish being in water, man being in Tao. And I was in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. They have this new great thing called the Sphere, which is this great big orb that is massive, and you go inside and you see around you 360 degrees. It's like a theater, 16,000 people, and around you, 500 feet high, there's a screen that goes all the way above your head and all the way behind you. And I saw a band called Dead and Company, which is a very psychedelic rock group with John Mayer. It used to be the Grateful Dead. Now it's the surviving members and John Mayer. And I don't know what happened. I happened to imbibe some kind of fungus before going in there. And I had this experience where I was talking to some friends that were not into Taoism or anything like that. Like the idea of Tao is very foreign to them. And they were all having kind of a wonderful experience before we walked into the show. And I said, and I was feeling the air around me. And I was feeling the energy and the vibrations of people. And it was this kind of melange, this mix of people, sounds, the feeling of air, just everything that was around me, the questionable where I end and what the environment around me is, right? And all of that together. And I had this real sensation of like, this is Tao, and this idea that fish in water, man in Tao. And then also the man in Tao idea of, we have the concept of us, and like, what if you were to, back to cannibalism, what if you were to cut off my finger, right? Is that finger me still, right? That, you threw and chucked it across the room. Is that finger me? No, I don't think it's me anymore. My dead skin cells that fall off, my body that regenerates every 7 years. I don't know if that's a true thing or an old wives' tale, but your body completely regenerates, just not as nicely, every 7 years. What is me and what is not me? It becomes a very big question, and that again is the connection between being in this Tao around us, being of it, and the illusion of being separate from it. And so one of the things that I am often kind of perplexed about is the idea of what is being in alignment with Tao and what is not. If I'm having these experiences, both sober and not, of this great connection around me, when am I not connected? How am I better connected? Because, again, if I'm living in Tao, how can I be apart from it? And so, George, I know this is a very tough question, and kind of one of the central things that people often discuss in Taoism. I saw this question on Reddit, and there was a long thread about it. I thought it was great, but I wanted to get your take on what are symptoms of being unaligned or aligned with Tao?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and speaking to you being at that concert and all these sensations, it's like it's not the what of our lives that changes, but it's the how we relate to it. It's the same experience, like before enlightenment, sweep floor, chop wood. After enlightenment, sweep floor, chop wood. But the experience is different. There's a lightness and an energy. So it's such a key question. It's like, okay, so if we're miraculous manifestations of the mysterious intelligence of the universe, and if we call that mysterious intelligence, the Tao, and if everything in the universe is interconnected, part of this great unfolding dance, then how can we be out of alignment? And how can we be disconnected? How can life be so hard, and as it often is? And so, again, every spiritual tradition and wisdom tradition has to have an answer for this. It's like the nature of suffering, and why is life so tough? Last week we talked about words being one of the sources of our challenges, but at a more deep level, even predating words, for me what comes up with understanding our relationship to the Tao is this word, duh.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So,
I like where you're at.
yeah.
I still say day. I don't care if I get an angry email about it. I just feel weird saying duh. I'm not a native Chinese speaker.
Yes,
Everyone knows that. I'm
Yeah.
gonna.
Well, as we know, that the Tao that can be Taoed is not the eternal Tao. So the
Yes.
words don't really matter. But how I've learned living in China is so the foundational text of Taoism, Tao, De, Jing. So De is like, somebody's telling you something obvious. Jing, the ringing of a bell. Tao, De, Jing. And
Wow.
so Jing means classic text. Tao, the way of nature, as we've explored. What does De mean? De is, again, has many different definitions, but for me it's nature's power. Nature's power. So if Tao is the way of nature, this is our potential. This is like how we work. But just because something can work in a certain way doesn't mean it actually works in that way when life unfolds. So, a beautiful Californian redwood has the potential, the Tao, to be 100 meters across, but if you put a cage around it and split it in half, it's going to be wonky and not get as big. If you put a human being, okay, so what's our Tao? We have awesome potential for clarity, wisdom, energy, resilience, and we then need to meet fundamental needs to access that Tao. So, we need to move every day. We need to eat healthy, non-processed foods. We need to be in connection and in relationship. And so the extent to which we access that Tao, we can then tap into that De, that power. So De is the outcome from understanding our Tao and living in harmony with our Tao.
So it's often called the stepping forward, like right. It's like moving out with the left foot. It's like the first step in the virtue and the possibilities of Tao.
Exactly. So it's you taking action in the world and how that unfolds. So somebody in a state of wu wei, a state of effortless action, is emanating De. It's this kind of natural virtue and energy that's not contrived. So then, again, the wisdom of our nervous system, we come from the Tao, it gives us signals as to the extent to which we are accessing our potential, accessing that Tao. So, if we eat junk food every day, we begin to feel lethargic and tired. If we move and play and do Qigong and do all of our practices, then we feel a bit better. If we lie, it's like, thou shalt not lie is a 10 commandments, like some external power telling you how to act. But actually, we've already got that wisdom built in. That actually when we lie, we create a web of complexity that we can't keep up with, which then leads to destruction and disconnection, loneliness. And so to access our Tao then and to actually be in connection with the Tao, for me, is to then have awareness, so sensitivity, what do I need? And then actually practice, so taking action to give ourselves what we need to then stay in relationship with that Tao. And then the outcome is this natural energy, this De and harmony. One final bit. Harmony in Chinese is He, and another word for the Wudang Mountains, another name for it, where I studied in China for 2 years, is Tai He Shan, which means Supreme Harmony Mountain.
Wow.
And so it's the mountain where you learn how to be supremely harmonious.
Wow.
And that is the outcome when we understand our Tao.
think I did reach Supreme Harmony Mountain when I was at that concert. I got to say, there was
It's a state
so,
within.
I love everything you have to say, and I think it's maybe almost a way of, we have our windshield wipers on our car, and stuff accumulates that is the difference between seeing things clearly and existing, for a weird term, clearly with the world around us, and in harmony would probably be a good way to say that. And I think that also, if you go back to the metaphor with fish and water, you can be in water and be a fish and be moving with the water and the ways of the water. Because, it's kind of funny, as a human, when I'm swimming, I have a rudimentary feeling of water and moving about it. It's not that natural to me. Assuming a fish has senses in understanding of currents and flow and where to find food and sensations that I would never conceive of, right? So this fish can either move skillfully through this water using its natural currents or not, or again have blockages and ways of not getting through it correctly. So a fish can be in the water and have skillful or non-skillful reactions to said water, right? Depending on how in alignment the fish is. Because we might have a fish that's out there that's just not with the program, right? The fish hasn't read...
Flipping all over the place.
Has not read the Tao of fish, the Tao for fishes, anything like that.
Yeah.
And just like that, a human can be in the Tao, but yet not as skillfully interacting with it. Is that okay? Is that a good way of making it simple?
Yeah, love it. And yeah, skill is the word that keeps coming to mind. It's like when we skillfully navigate life, we navigate life with wisdom. And with wisdom, we find harmony. And so, again, that's empowering, right? So because, we are born in societies that don't educate us to help us, live with skill. And we live in a world of trauma and absurdity and stupidity and confusion. And so, we're all starting from exactly where we are, which may be not very harmonious. It may be anxious. It may be grieving. And so then that's your Tao. The Tao can be the ways of nature, something is big. And this is now another meaning of the Tao. So if the Tao literally translates as the way, the path in Chinese. So we talked about the ways of nature. This is the great unfolding miracle that we're a part of. And when we connect with that, we can resource ourselves in that. But the Tao can also be as super, super small. The Tao of knitting, the Tao of concert going, and the Tao of George, and the Tao of Todd, and the Tao of our beautiful listeners. And so, wherever we are in our lives, the confluence of all the different parts of family, society, choices, education brings you right here, right now. This is your path. This is your way. And the empowering bit is that with help and support and community, as well as action and taking responsibility, is that there is the potential for us to move from where we are and to navigate. No longer do we have to be the fish stuck literally for some reason under the rocks, choosing to just stay under the rocks and starving. It's like, mate, you don't need to be there. And there's change that's possible and balance is possible. And you can come up and go jump out the water and leap if you'd like to.
The skillless fish. I love that metaphor. I'm going to think about myself sometimes when I'm floundering.
Nice.
Todd, stop podcasting. Turn off the mic, Todd. Just junk like that. And now we're going to move on to finish off this show, the bit with no name, which, bits don't need names because this is a Taoist podcast. George is going to have, what's your exercise? What's your practice you got for us right now?
Beautiful. So, if you joined last week, we explored the breath. Qi has two meanings, breath and energy. And if we come to our breath, it's a powerful tool that can support us. And slowing your breath down. If there's one thing to remember, I'll give you two things. One thing is practice is the path. Keep repeating that. Practice is the path to peace. You can do it. Just take one step at a time. Growth is possible, change is possible, balance is possible. Then the breath. So it's a tool you can use. Slow your breath down, and you automatically send soothing signals through your nervous system. So we're going to build on that this week, and I invite you to move with your breath. And a little phrase I love is movement snacks or chi breaks. Yeah, don't make your movement just like walking the dog once a day, a yoga class once a day. Have morsels of movement. Have a movement snack. Do even just 5 qigong moves, just like any sort of movement. And you can join me on my YouTube channel, typing George Thompson qigong, if you want to move and breathe with me. But I invite you today, dear listener, to do a movement snack. Any movement that you want, taking a minute or two to stand up, move your body, and to come to your breath as you move. And that can be a really powerful tool to help us downregulate, relax, and find freedom.
But your movement snack may not be popcorn because that's cannibalism.
Yeah, we don't endorse that.